Yes, I do.
All right, everyone. Well, listen up. We have a really fun guest speaker today in Mark Ruff's Real Estate Development Chat Series. I'm bringing in some professionals who are, as you know, going to elucidate and kind of highlight some of the material that we're covering this particular quarter. Now, today what we have, or rather who we have, is Dario Svidler. And, you know, an interesting story is that Dario is one of the top producing commercial and investment real estate brokers here in Los Angeles. I mean, he's got just phenomenal success. He's built a team. And I want to let you know, Dario is one of my former students. Now, he gives me credit for his success. I take no credit at all. He was very smart to begin with, but Dario took real estate investment analysis with me, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago or something like that. And then he segued from investment analysis to my advanced real estate finance course. And Dario and I were just kibitzing a little bit before the meeting here. And I mentioned to him that, you know, in about 14, almost 15 years of teaching, I have had 2 students on my recommendation do all of their calculations by hand, neither with a financial calculator nor a spreadsheet. Now, maybe financial calculator, but you actually drew out and wrote out all of your calcs. And as we were chatting beforehand, Dario, isn't that the best way to learn how to crunch the numbers?
Absolutely. I hated the calculator to begin with, but I grew up with a father that's an engineer and a kind of math whiz. So I remember growing up and bringing my homework back to class. I mean, back to school the next day, and my teachers are like, "You got the right answer, but this is the long way. We don't teach this anymore."
Right.
So I've always learned. My father always taught me, go step by step, do it the long way. Don't take any shortcuts when doing math. And
Yep.
obviously, it's helped me through my career.
It's stuck. Well,
Yeah.
that's great advice from your father. Now, what I'll do is, Dario, let me just give you a brief intro. Dario Svidler grew up, honestly, with real estate all around him. If you want to take a look at his bio, it's at the website. The link I will put in this week's Canvas based on this particular conversation. Dario's dad, as he mentioned, a structural engineer and general contractor, great combination, and his mother, an architect. Holy cow, you got kind of like bookended there, didn't you? They both take Dario to their job sites throughout his childhood with experience in all kinds of facets of construction and the real estate business. His career ranges from commercial and industrial, all types of residential, and Dario has sold in excess of $1 billion worth of real estate. And quite honestly, that's going to get doubled probably sometime soon. Dario does have a talent and a knack for doing financial calculations, quite complex ones. That I taught him. He's very good at finding value add properties to kind of increase yields or find those real hot deals that investors are always looking for. Now, the nature of our talk today and the reason why I wanted to bring Dario in to chat with us is because in real estate development, you have nothing unless you have a site. And so the talk today is, how do you find sites? This is all about site sourcing, deal sourcing, acquisitions, and so forth. So sometimes developers exclusively rely on brokers. Sometimes developers work hand in hand with brokers and have inside or internal acquisitions associates going after particular sites and deals. So I wanted Dario to talk to us about what that looks like. What does it take to find opportunities? What are kind of the tactics or strategies that top brokers and top developers use to find the deals in the first place? So Dario, thank you very much. We're grateful for you being here. Take it away.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Definitely a pleasure to be talking with you again.
Good to see you.
And yes, he is responsible for a very large chunk of my career by teaching me and making sure I reinforced the words, the numbers, the underwriting, everything. He made it, turn it into a language rather than just numbers on the board. So thank you very much. And I appreciate the help throughout the course. My career started a little bit weirdly, and I fell into land almost because I realized that there was an opening in the market of agents that really don't focus full-time on land. There's a handful of agents that do it, but the majority of, the handful of agents that do really well, like whether it be a Lori Lustig or You know, there's other agents, obviously, in the business that sell a lot of land, but that are almost exclusively doing or predominantly doing land. So I started doing that probably 6, 7 years ago, and have obviously built a business of kind of successfully finding land sites, getting called to list land sites, selling land sites, whether it be across the board. I will start to say that the most important tool I have for discovering sites is really title. When I'm looking at title for sites, I'm looking for a few things. Number one, obviously I wanted zoning is where to start. But predominantly I'm also looking at properties that maybe have turning loans that are coming due, sites that have a small percentage of improvements compared to the size of the lot. Obviously high density, high traffic locations, but the two main tools that I use for identifying sites that I'm going to work on is title and Google Maps. I fly around, look at sites, look at where I see certain areas that could use more phone calls, more development. There's a lot of low density, and also really kind of monitoring what the city of LA is doing, right? In the last 3-4 years with TOC, with the new laws that came in through, Newsom, with, not having to do parking near transit, we're in such a fluid change in the way we view land that you have to be able to be creative with a site. Where we used to be so simple. I grew up in a family where my father built anywhere from 8 to 20 condo projects. Unit projects, right? And they were all condominium. And when he started in the business in LA, he was really focused on building by right, for sale product within the code, and being able to fast track every project through the city of LA. That world has changed, no longer exists. Building by right, for the most part, is impossible. Building condominiums is pretty much impossible these days because you can't pencil with all the new replacement laws. But I realized over the years in seeing what my father built, and while I grew up a lot of times when I was a kid on job sites, I really hated the job site. I realized that my bigger desire was at an office, at a desk, and really underwriting and looking for the deal rather than being on a job site, talking to the foreman and whatnot. My brother went into general contractor and he did it. Now he works with me. He hated being on a job site after 15 years. So he got out of that part. But in today's world, you have to really kind of approach land from a creative side, and creative within, obviously a spectrum, right? I've sold in the last 5 years, probably a dozen sites, for example, for co-living. What's co-living? 4 or 5 bedroom units with a central kitchen, shareable everything, and usually a curated lifestyle in the building, with the main operators being either category company or common or treehouse, or there's a few other companies that kind of do the co-living. And when I started seeing that, I started thinking to myself, like, there's not one way to skin this cat. There's a different process, and every single site can be different. I can also decide I want to do micro units, which obviously is becoming a hot kind of commodity. Yeah. I can do ADUs now. I can do all kinds of, shareable living, co-living, combination of all of those, mixed use, et cetera. So really the world has changed, and I've kind of started to realize that a big selling point for me when I'm pitching a client has been to not just say, well, this is what you can build, this is what you're going to build, this is the only thing that's going to get built. I'm able to talk to my clients and say, well, I can pitch it different ways, right? But unless I know what's doable, what's allowable, and what's going to make financial sense, I'm sort of, stuck, right? So it's more than just kind of being creative. It's also really having the educational side and the underwriting side, and seeing it from multiple ways and knowing how to underwrite it in multiple ways. That's the key component. Yeah. Now, when you put kind of a title package together, what Dario is kind of mentioning is that you can call a title company, especially if you have a business relationship with them, or even not, if you tell them that you're interested in doing work with them. You can call a title rep, who is basically a salesperson within the title company, and request what is commonly referred to in different terms, a farm package or some type of a title package that will give you owner information for a specific geographic area of town.
So what Dario, if I could just refresh this a little bit, he's mentioning he kind of does a little bit of reconnaissance work simply on Google or Google Maps or Google Earth, just to get some kind of an overview, maybe a 50-foot view of what an area might be. Maybe there's some underutilized land, meaning low FAR, floor to area ratio. Maybe there's a 10,000 square foot lot with a 1,300 square foot house zoned R3 that developers would need a bib because they're going to start drooling over how much money they're going to make on such an easy site. But then after you kind of do that investigative work, Dario, do you start calling people? Do you start visiting with the owners? Do you start sending them any type of correspondence? How do you kind of get into the mix in maybe talking to somebody about selling to you or to a developer?
So we created a team. Our team is 9 people. And we're on the phones all day. I mean, ultimately, you got to build a relationship. Ultimately, to be successful, you have to have a personality. You have to have a point of view. You have to realize that when we're cold calling, when you're on the phone, you have to be kind of a therapist within the first 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. The way somebody picks up the phone and says hello, I'm going to already know what emotion they're in for that day.
Right.
Is it going to be aggressive? Is it going to be curious? Is it going to be confused? Did they even understand my name correctly? Right. I have a difficult name, a not common name. I have a deep voice. I have a lot of things that work against me that I have to go around kind of the side door to try to build that relationship. Mm-hmm. Right. So so really, apart from knowing my business, the first 10, 15 seconds, first couple of minutes is about building that relationship, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're coming in just as and you have to also realize that the majority of people you're calling aren't in real estate. Mm-hmm. They're mostly either inherited the property, have a single family home that they bought that has good zoning. I'm selling a property right now in the Valley where the family has owned this site, I kid you not, for 100 years. This is my oldest ownership listing. It is now owned by 18 different family members. There's a managing member that I deal with, and then we cold called because we identified the site because we had just sold about a half acre down the street. So we started cold calling the area and we built that relationship and really kind of blossomed. Yeah. And that was through one of my agents on my team built the relationship. So what he does, obviously he's got to, you got to have a specific personality. So he sort of sets them up and I take them down. Right. Yeah. I come in, he'll build that initial relationship. And then I come in with my, years of success, but also it can all be faked, right? If you were just starting out, you could say just by being part of it, whether it be a team, whether it be part of an organization, you use their victories to help you get through that first phase. Right. So when my junior cold callers are cold calling, they're using my resume to build that, at least that level of trust. Right. That's the key component.
Yeah. So let me just kind of summarize as well for everyone. What Dario is mentioning, if you didn't quite catch it, is that he's developed a team of kind of like juniors and seniors, and then, almost like a CPA firm or a law firm where there are junior people who are basically doing a lot of the work. And then the seniors kind of come in and wrap everything up. So, there's going to be times when you as a beginning developer, if you're making calls or trying to source deals where you're going to get out of that line of it and then have to work on underwriting a site, maybe making a pitch to an investor. So you're going to be taken out of that acquisitions phase. So you need other people doing that as you are doing the work of the development so that, as Dario would likely attest to, the deal flow continues. You got to have a continuous deal flow kind of coming in and coming out. Now, Dario, when you do meet with somebody or actually talk with somebody who has expressed an interest in doing something, perhaps disposing of a site, what are kind of your initial steps when you look at it before you maybe bring it to the market or maybe you pitch it to a developer for purchase? What do you kind of look at?
Well, first and foremost, you got to get a price out of the seller, or at least a level of comfort of pricing for the seller. Now, having been doing this now for a while, 99% of the times, they will say, you tell me what the value is.
Yes, exactly.
That's number one. And I never, ever give a value on the first call.
Never.
Right? I think it's a mistake. You don't sound professional. You sound like you're just trying to throw out numbers and figure it out. And the reason, and further than that, I have my retort, right? Why I can't give that price. And I say, with today's market, your property can be multiple different things. So I have to figure out what's going to be the highest and best value. And to me, that works because they say, well, this person's now going to kind of really consider what it is, right?
Yeah.
So first I figure out the price, I underwrite it. I go back to the seller and I say, listen, I'm going to tell you the price that possibly the kind of the high level guys or the guys that are doing this day in and day out would pay for the property today, which doesn't mean that that's what it's worth.
Right.
Okay. There's always a different value from what it really is worth, whether it be even off market or on market, and what is the end goal for that property. So I always push back and I say, well, listen, the value that I'm going to give you will never be as good as what you expect it to be, because that's the game we play. Right? But I will tell you this, that I will tell you what it's worth today, but I can always get more on the market.
Right. Would you agree that the longer the time frame that the seller has to play ball, generally the higher the price gets or is, and the more urgency that there is, the more reality kind of strikes, and that's when the price kind of gets more real.
Absolutely. I always tell them that the higher price you want is the longer time it takes.
Right.
It's that simple. You want to close tomorrow, this is the price. You want to close a year from now, this is the price. I'll give you an example. I just opened up an escrow yesterday for a site in by MacArthur Park, right, Westlake, to build over 150 units. A lot of issues with the site. There's a potential historical property has been identified. It has not been registered as historical. And there's existing 27 units. There's 8 units that are potentially historical. The other are not. You're also dealing in an area that has what's called the City West specific plan, which has zoning within its own specific plan. And you just have a neighborhood that pushes back on almost all redevelopment. So we opened up an escrow that's going to be for 24 months. And there's going to be trigger points across the board, right? Where they say, well, we've hit this section. We're going to now release this amount of money. Right. Or we're going to pay an option payment, or we're going to do, there's different ways of kind of doing that. I'm doing another site, the one in Van Nuys, where the sellers aren't going to do a 1031 exchange, go into another property. They're cashing out 18 people, obviously, in their 80s.
Yeah. It's time,
so
right?
It's time, right? 100 years later. We're going to do a seller financing. So it's going to be a 3-year seller financing because the entitlements these days take forever.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of what the owners want. And that's also part of the research, right? When I'm talking to somebody and knowing that in the first few minutes that he is a managing member of a property that's been owned for 100 years, I reposition my pitch, right? I have to understand what their goals are with the money rather than what my goals are. And lastly, what my client's goals are, the buyer on the other side. This is a relationship business, and relationship isn't just building the relationships, it's nurturing and maintaining that relationship, which I find is, apart from all the stuff I've learned from Mark, from mentors, from this, from that, the key component is understanding on the other side and treating everybody on the other side as if they don't know real estate, right? Because if you just kind of expect them to operate in the way that we're used to, whether it be the way we're trained or the way we work at our company, that's just foolish. You're going to lose right away. Yeah. So you got to focus on the seller owner, their goals versus yours. And if those line up, then we make a deal.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, listen up, everybody. We're into this now about 20 minutes or so. I don't want to take too much more time of Dario's. He's been such a gem to join us, but I do want to summarize, if I could, for students in the class, that when you are in the development business, you have to access sites. Again, without a site, there's nothing. You can have all the money in the world. You can have a boatload of equity, a stable of equity sources ready and willing to go, but you can't pull the trigger unless you find a site. There are, a couple of ways of doing that. You can do it yourself. You can rely on brokers. You can do a mix of both. My suggestion to any development student is to not exclusively rely on brokers, but to also get on the phone, start talking to owners. Dario is nodding his head. He's an amazing broker and an amazing financial underwriter, but he knows how the business works. You've got to get out there and hustle up sites, for yourself. So combine that with the brokerage community, give Dario a call. I'll put all of his contact information in the canvas for this particular week. He's an amazing broker, a former student, and knows how to crunch numbers by hand. So Dario, we're very, very grateful for your time. Is there anything else that maybe you can kind of give us some final closing comments for students about accessing sites?
Yes. Number one is patience. First and foremost, this takes time.
Yeah.
People want to jump in and figure out that they found something right away. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously check the websites, but I'll tell you what's been the most important tool for me pre-COVID. And now I don't luckily have to really do it again, but get out there and network. Go to events, whatever. Open up the business journal. There's an event every week. You know, I'm Jewish, so I do a lot with the Jewish Federation's real estate division. I've joined a charity board that, while not necessarily directly real estate related, a lot of the people on the board are real estate folk, right? The key component to me, the most important component, get out there, meet people, go to every networking event. BizNow, which is a big events company, Real Deal does events. There are events almost every other week, every other day.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a great way to go and meet people. And when you're talking to agents or meeting people that are sourcing deals, figure out a way, not just like, hey man, send me your deals, send me your deals. Be specific.
Right.
Know exactly what you're looking for. The thing I hate the most is a buyer that says, send me everything.
Send me anything that makes sense, right? Well, what does make sense mean?
What makes sense to me is everything, because I get check every time.
Yeah, right.
Right. So what are you asking me for? And I'm not the one writing a check.
Yeah.
So it's really building that relationship, understanding who you're dealing with, and being a resource for them, but also being knowledgeable and being focused on a specific product.
Yep. Well, everybody listen, the bottom line is that you've got to talk to people, whether it's on the phone, whether it's in person, whether it's networking. Dario mentioned that, I don't know if you caught it, but he said that his team is on the phone all day long, making calls, talking to people, developing those relationships. Rarely will a site owner say, yeah, I need to sell today, bring the listing agreement today, let's get it on the market today. No, it typically doesn't work like that. Most of the money is made in the follow-up. So remember that when you're hustling for sites. Well, Dario, thank you very much. I'm going to leave all of Dario's contact information, links, all that stuff in the Canvas box for this week. Dario, what I'll do here is I'll just sign off. I'll stop the recording. Don't sign off yet. I do want to chat with you just for a moment. So we're very grateful, Dario. Thank you very much. Let me just
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.